Okay, so welcoming everyone this morning to Self Exploration's Coffee Chat series. And today is a special edition. We normally do them on Wednesdays, but we're doing one on Sunday. And this time, my guest is Jane Iskander. And Jane is an expert in life-changing diagnosis. And I'm just going to have Jane introduce herself in a second and just talk to us a little bit about what that means. And then we're going to have some questions. So if you've got questions, just pop them into either the chat window on Facebook, or just if you're going to be live with us on here, you can just put in the chat window that you'd like to ask questions, and we will open up the microphone for you to ask questions. So just over to you, Jane, to say hello.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Jane. How much of an introduction do you want? I'm Jane. I'm Jane, and I'm an occupational therapist and a coach. And my work that I do is around. I work with people who've had life-changing diagnoses, and that can be anything. Sometimes we go straight to the kind of terminal diagnosis and the big situations, but that can also be almost any diagnosis that changes a life. So things like particularly diabetes and arthritis, where your life is going to change. um, your life is going to change. And I think that, well, I know the reason that I got into this, the reason that I went down this path, it's because in my early 20s, I had a life-changing diagnosis myself. And from being a young, active, devil may care, nothing matters young woman, my life changed dramatically in just a few months. And I just had to get my head around it. And I didn't. It took me many years to get my head around it and to learn new ways of being and new ways of living. And my purpose in life now is to enable and empower other people to not spend years doing it. So to maybe spend a little bit less time with the struggles and with the dramas and the traumas, and to find their purpose, their meaning and purpose in their life a bit more quickly and easily.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And, I was thinking about this when we agreed, like, for you to come on about what is the problems that people experience kind of thing. And what are the things that you work with? And diabetes was one that came up with me, certainly because I'm, aware of people that have, come across that and thought that does massively change everything in your life. So, and I think I wrote on some of my posts as well, it is from things like that right through to cancer and autoimmune disease. It could be all sorts of things. So you've kind of touched on that a bit. So what sort of problems do people experience when they get a life-changing diagnosis, and what are they experiencing, going through kind of in their mind?
Yeah, again, well, you say in their minds, there's so much stuff that goes on. And in their minds, in a mind, it can be anything from just negative thinking, just the kind of the why me questions, the what's going on in my life, are things ever going to change, am I ever going to be able to, am I ever going to be normal again, is my life ever going to be enjoyable again? um and as well, the more practical issues, the physical changes in ability, the got to test your blood sugars, got to do your injections, got to take your tablets, got to see the doctor, all those sorts of things, which can loom really big and can be um, kind of all encompassing. All those things can really take over, and you can lose a lot of what life's really about. So excuse me. So things like fatigue and anxiety can get huge in a mind, in a life. And that's the sort of thing that I can really help with initially, just overcoming those sorts of things and finding ways of managing those sorts of things can be a really good start. And then we can go on and look at the almost bigger problems of how a diagnosis can take over a life and get in the way.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that, when you're talking about whether it be something, obviously, none of these things are kind of more greater than another. Um, but the fear that we have associated with them of what might be the outcome probably is more than what's likely that's impacting people's thoughts. And I don't know whether you know Tabby, who's also one of the people from our group. I was working with some clients previously who had terminal diagnosis. And I said to Tabby once when I was working with these people, I said, if there's one piece of advice that you could give someone, what would it be? And just to put into context, like Tabby's recovered from terminal cancer, and she's also a medical doctor.
Mm.
Um, and she just said to me that whatever the professionals tell you is only a possibility. And interestingly enough, that really, really resonated with me because even coming back to a simple thing in life, thinking about any definition that we have, we make it worse by saying it to people and thinking about it. So I'll give you an example from myself. I ended up a few years ago, over 10 years ago, with wheat intolerance. So I went to naturopath and got diagnosed basically, and then I knew what I was. Do you know what I mean? So then I had a definition so I could say to people, I'm now wheat intolerant. And what eventually I went to naturopath for years, and eventually wheat intolerance, I got rid of it kind of thing, because you can recover from that. And I still heard myself saying to people, I suffer from wheat intolerance, even though she said you don't have it anymore. But I was still having some residual sort of symptoms, and I kept saying it. So I really kept reinforcing that that was actually what I am and what my problem was. And therefore, I probably didn't allow it to go away. So I suppose that's one thing that's harder for people to get around. So do you have sort of ways of supporting people with that sort of
Absolutely.
talk?
Yeah, absolutely talk, and it's self-talk, and there's so much power in the language that we use to ourselves and the language that we use outwardly and verbally. And yeah, as you say, if I put a label on myself that says, this is what I am, this is who I am, then it makes it all the more difficult to step forward what that label is. So yeah, when I was younger and I had a diagnosis, I became a young woman who had systemic sclerosis. That's what, yeah, that was kind of my persona. That was my identity. And I suppose what I found through all the work and all the training and all the looking at myself is that I'm not someone with systemic sclerosis. I'm Jane.
Mm.
And it's, the fact that there's a diagnosis is, it's almost kind of part of something that you might find in my handbag. There's a diagnosis, there's some lipstick, there's some chewing gum. It's just another thing about me. It's just another thing that I have, or that, and I think even saying I have, that's not true either. So I do a lot of work with people about what's true, what's words, and a lot about how we use language, because language is just so strong. And yeah, it's just so powerful. If when I label myself, when I use words about myself that may or may not be true, then I make it very difficult for myself to move past that. That even the why me kind of thinking, this is awful, why has this happened in my life? And that's it. It just turns into a cycle of thinking about the diagnosis, thinking about the symptoms, thinking about the negatives, and that just holds you in all those things.
Yeah,
And my work is about kind of reaching outside those things. Sorry, carry on.
that's what I was going to say. I think I read in one of your posts. I don't know whether you wrote "I am not my diagnosis" or something like that. And I thought, yeah, that's phenomenal, and that's so true. Like similarly, me, I was not my diagnosis as well.
Mm.
Um, but it was interesting until I was aware that I was using that language, then I couldn't stop using it, and I was like, oh, I keep telling people this. And so simply from even if I say I am a runner or positive things, we don't
Yeah.
mind about that, do we? But all those negative things, and if people also offer you a definition of yourself, like somebody might say to you, even if it's in a nasty way or a supposedly a nice way, you're fat or you're something, those words become what you
Yeah,
kind of lock onto, and you
absolutely.
really make them kind of permanent. And so equally with the diagnosis, there's possibilities of changing, isn't there?
Yes, and I think something that you kind of touched on there, we have so much, we almost, about the way we see the medical profession. We see the medical profession as the people who know, they are the experts, and I would not disrespect the medical profession at all. I have a great respect for them. Half my family are doctors, and that's an amazing thing to be. However, to it's really important to not wear the label. So when someone who we think is amazing and think is really important and an expert says, this is your diagnosis and this is what's going to happen as well. So that's again, as Tabby said, that's not necessarily true. It's just something. And if a doctor says their opinion of what might happen in your life, it's only from their experience, their opinion. It's not necessarily true. And we humans are incredibly powerful beings. And we're here making up our lives each and every day. We're here creating and inventing. I don't think I'm going anywhere near the question you just asked me.
No, you are. Yeah. We were talking about possibilities. Yeah. That it is a possibility, but there's also another possibility, isn't it? Yeah.
And there are so many possibilities. It's, when I was diagnosed, it was possible for me to lie on the sofa, and I did quite a lot. I did an awful lot of that. But it was also, there was possibility for me to go in another room and create or broadcast or connect with people or write a book. Or I have a friend who got ill, wrote a book.
Yeah.
That was what she decided she was going to create.
Wonderful. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, some of these kind of really moments that stop us in our tracks are there, that give us, I suppose, an opportunity to get real about what we'd love to do in our life, kind of, and get right onto the thing that we were probably meant to do in our purpose, and maybe be here to help other people as well. So we can stay in that, like you say, the victim orientation of poor me, and I'm going to make myself suffer longer because I'm angry or upset, and all valid experiences to have, but also there is always another option, and that's probably the hardest thing for people to come to terms with, especially when, like you said, the medical profession has got so much kudos, I suppose, with people. Similarly, I stay away from them as much as I can, actually. My dad has this theory as well: if I don't go to a doctor, they can't tell me anything's wrong, and they can't get my hands on me, and they can't make me sick. And he's doing quite well, so I'm quite happy about that. And he's 78 now, so he's still living on our farm. But yeah, I guess for me also, I like a lot of other therapies, like the Eastern therapies. Like, I've done acupuncture quite a lot for when I was having the gut problems, sort of thing, or the problems with my wheat intolerance, and it seems to me that when we have those other alternative therapies, they look more at the cause or the reason, or maybe it's emotionally created problems, kind of thing, rather than just going, oh, this is what your symptoms are, and here are some drugs that will take care of it. And so
I think
yeah.
the holisticness is so important, isn't it? And I do think that's what's so valuable about stepping outside, or they're called complementary therapies now. There's less of the alternative, and
Hmm.
the medical profession are now able to say complementary therapies rather than alternative. And yes, it's that holism that is so important, that it doesn't just treat the hurty leg, it treats the person who is part of the hurty leg, or the hurty leg as part of the person. So my main symptom of my condition is that I've got hand contractures. These are my hands. This is how my hands are. But that's, it's not a hand condition. It's from me. It's
Mm.
from all of me. And I think that's what's key. I'm also trained in Reiki, to a lower level, and that comes into what I do, because oh
Yeah.
the holisticness is what's so important, because you're connecting. In my work, I'm connecting with the people that I'm working with. It's not about treating or giving or doing to. It's about working together and finding ways. I said to one of my clients a little while ago, and she was asking me for some advice. I said, but I don't give advice. It's not something I will ever do, I hope. And that's because I don't have the answers. What we do in my work is we create solutions. That's what the work is
Yeah.
about, together creating solutions. So it's even more holistic than the one person. We're working together to find ways and to move forward.
Yeah, and so I was thinking maybe then, like even just before you mentioned your hand, but some people might think, oh, well, I've actually got some physical problems as a result of my diagnosis, so I'm kind of housebound and there's nothing that I can do. And I know you mentioned one of your friends wrote a book, and yeah, I've got an aunt too that she's always, saying, "Oh, my damn legs, there's a problem," and she's had operations on them and all sorts of problems with them from her childhood, kind of thing. And she's actually been put into a nursing home now because she can't walk since her next hip operation, but she hasn't had enough physiotherapy. And I keep saying to her, "You've got to take action and you've got to do it yourself. If the doctors don't have time, otherwise you'll never be able to come home," kind of thing. So there is an element of being able to go, what can I do and what can I rebuild? How can I, recover some of my issues, obviously to an extent where there isn't a way to do that. So, how could people really get themselves out of that place of poor me and into I've, I'm going to
Yeah.
try
I
something?
think I've been driving my friends and family nuts by saying life's about choices for years. And I think I actually myself only really realized what that meant a few years ago. Life is about choices, and it's about responses. So it's about having a choice in response, in how you respond to things. So whatever situation, we have a choice in what we do next. So a little bit like the diagnosis, I had a choice to sit on the sofa. At the time, I went with that choice. My friend had a choice to sit on the sofa. She actually sat on the sofa and wrote a book. You
Yeah.
have a choice. You have a choice in how you respond. There's a book, Man's Search for Meaning. I'm just trying to think who wrote it, by Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah.
Viktor Frankl was a Jew in the concentration camps during the war. And Viktor Frankl had his purpose. He had a reason to be and a reason to survive and a reason to keep going. And that's what we as humans, I believe, need to find. We need to find that thing that drives us, that thing that gives us meaning. And since I've learnt what having choices really means, it's about having choice in how you respond. And how I respond is driven by what I want in life. What I want in life is what gives my life meaning. And that's about helping people, supporting people, my loved ones. And for me, hugely, it's about creativity and being creative and painting and art. And I call it creative play. And that's what I do a lot with clients as well. We do creative play. And that's about just play. No
Yeah.
rules, no, don't make a mess, do make a mess and play.
Yeah, because I suppose that's one thing, you get so locked up into the analytics of things or the learning and the searching for meaning or answers, kind of, rather than being in your imagination and going, what would I love, and how can I do that? Because that will bring me joy to my soul, happiness.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, and imagination is hugely important, I think, in enjoying creating what you'd love in your life.
yeah. Yeah.
I used
So,
to work in a hospice. Um, Up until last year, I worked for 10 years as an occupational therapist in a hospice, and one of my joys in that work was the creative groups that we did together, and we would go into a room full of paints and art materials and things, and I would have with me people who had been given a diagnosis of terminal cancer or a neurological disease that was going to deteriorate, and they would say, oh no, I can't do this, I
mhm,
haven't done art since I was at school, I was never any good at it. Another example of labeling, I'm no good at art. And then I'd say just join in or sit and watch or whatever, and they'd join in, and then a couple of hours later, they'd have engaged, they'd have enjoyed putting paint on the paper, making patterns and colors and playing with it, and it's about joy. So yeah, oh look, I've gone on another tangent. Art and creativity can be about just play and joy. But what I was trying to say with that point was that um, that labeling thing. So we're not necessarily what we were labeled as children, even.
mm,
We are
absolutely.
whoever we are. And again, choices. You can choose to give it a go. Looking at this example, it's creativity. My friend's example, it was writing. She hadn't written before. It was just oh, okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah. And that's, I suppose, the starting point, isn't it, really, to be able to give yourself that break. So once you start giving yourself a break from that thought pattern that's kind of locked into I'm this diagnosis, is when you have a possibility to, choose another option, kind of be independent from that diagnosis. And those moments, those small
Yeah,
times of separation are what gives you that. It's similarly,
absolutely.
when I started this self-exploration meetup groups a few years ago, it was actually to connect with people with depression, and take them for a 30-minute walk just to get them out in the parks in London, really, just to get them a little bit of, like, I guess, that sense of bigger, that have a breath in, kind of like I'm not trapped in my four walls and the ceiling that's oppressing me, and I've got this big open sky that can make things a little bit better. And that 30 minutes just once a week was just one element of bringing some ease into individuals. And
Brilliant.
the people that I met, they were all suffering and they
Mm.
didn't have people helping them. And just that 30 minutes of a gentle walk had made a huge difference to them, especially, they could just talk and I would just listen. So I learned a lot from doing that exercise as well, about just those small moments make a big difference over time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's again, it's about opportunity, isn't it? It's just about that kind of opening a metaphorical door, and giving people a chance to express, to breathe in, to breathe out,
Yeah.
to yeah, just and I think there's a lot. I do think there's a lot as well in expression, whether that's the breathing out and the talking. There's definitely a lot to be said for an opportunity to talk, and that's again what I was saying about the people in the hospice, in the art groups. It's an opportunity to just be relaxed and to talk about what's difficult, what's going on in life. I think when you're wearing the label of the person with the diagnosis in your family, in your home life, there's a lot of being strong for each other. There's a lot of um, not really talking about it, or talking about it. It becomes about what the last test was, what the next drug is, who the next doctor to see is, and that all gets really big. My husband actually had a diagnosis of prostate cancer a couple of years ago, and he used this really useful concept for me. really helped me to understand the kind of what happens. And he spoke about a beach ball that was in front of his face, and the beach ball was the diagnosis, the doctors, the specialist nurses, the medications, all those sorts of things, and that was right in front of his face. So he couldn't see anything else. He couldn't see normal life because there was a big beach ball there. He couldn't see all the things that he loves and likes to do because there was a big beach ball there. So until in his mind, until he dealt with that, he couldn't see past it. So in for me, to kind of avoid having to see, avoiding the beach ball, to focus on the fantastic stuff, focus on what you love, what you would love in your life, focus on, and even the small pleasures. That's something that can be funny, that small pleasures can be huge, but the simplest little things can be really life-changing. Just to focus on doing one lovely thing a day. And when life's really tough, to focus on, from sometimes it's something like a lovely cup of coffee when the coffee shops are open, to go and have a lovely cup of coffee sitting in a cafe, either on your own or with a friend, whatever, just a simple little something that you can do. For me at the moment, it's something, well, for me at the moment it's painting, but to go outside, to talk to a friend, to connect with someone who you can talk to, just those simple little things. Read a book, listen to a podcast. There's, and it doesn't have to be a big deal, and it doesn't have to take a lot of energy. And I think that's another really key thing to remember, is that you don't have to go to great efforts to enjoy little things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, I love being able to sit with my coffee. I'm so busy all the time that just sit with the cuppa and just enjoy the cuppa rather than have the cuppa when I'm doing things
Yeah.
is an experience that I often don't give to myself. Exactly. So, it's and it's interesting, I suppose, just bringing in where we are with the lockdowns that we've been experiencing over the last year. I mean, that's another definition that we've got, or another kind of rules that an adaptation that we've had to make in our lives, kind of thing. Um, and for me, I've coped really quite well because I'm like, I've got a lot of things I want to do, like say podcast, books. There's so much to do. So I'm actually kind of like, I don't have all these other distractions of people inviting me out, so I can do all those other things that I've been avoiding doing or putting off, or maybe clean the fridge and clean the oven and all. Well, I mean, I do that regularly anyway, but I've like gone. It's everything is quite good. So I've been able to use my experience as something of purpose and value for me, rather than feeling how difficult it is. And of course it's difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for everyone as well. But there's a choice, exactly like you say. Which side of the choice are you choosing? What's
Yeah,
your experience going to be?
absolutely. What are you choosing? This is the fact, this is the situation, this is the circumstance. Now you've got that direction or that direction or that direction to go in, or five other directions. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, there's a choice. And I think that's what's the hardest thing to realize, is that we have choice. I think that's really not easy, because it doesn't feel like it. 90% of the time it doesn't feel like we've got choice. Most of the time we feel like this is what life is, this is what I have to do. We've been brought up to do what we're told. We've been brought up that in schools we're taught that this is how it is. In schools we're not really taught to express ourselves and be creative, um, or to choose. We're kind of taught, well, you're quite good at maths, so you'll be an accountant. You're quite good at, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a
You're
filtering
quite good at
system.
football, so you'll be a nurse.
Yeah, it is a filtering system, isn't it, really? So a
Yeah, I
classification
think that's a really
system.
good way of putting it.
And yeah, we do, like when we get information, we try and classify it to make it make sense and figure out what it is. Similarly, y- when I was diagnosed with wheat intolerance, before there was different foods that I'd eat. I go, and funnily enough, I could eat wheat in Australia and I didn't have any symptoms, but I could eat wheat here and I'd have problems.
Mhm.
So I'm like, well, how can it be wheat? Because I can eat wheat in
Yeah.
Australia and I don't have any issues. So you can try to really box stuff in and classify and kind of fit it into a pigeonhole and experiences or what you know.
And we love that, don't we? We love to put things in a box because that kind of gives us control. It gives us a sense of things being manageable. If I can put it in a box, then I know what it is and I can deal with it. Um, if I'm given too many choices, I get a little bit overwhelmed, I get scared, and I don't know where to go with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're very keen a lot of the time to put things into boxes, and that's not necessarily the most useful thing to do.
No, because we miss out on what are the other options that we haven't considered or thought about. And, that's where it comes in where you talk about allowing yourself to play and getting your imagination going. Because, if you're in a world of working like most of us are in society and, kind of analytically or
Mm.
rationally focused, then thinking about what can I do is not second nature. But the pandemic has almost given people that opportunity to go, how can I get the outcome that I want? How can I do
Mhm.
something? So helping people to become more innovative and intuitive about what's a way I can be creative here with seeing friends
Yeah.
and family.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of getting my thinking similar to the thinking that I have when I'm on holiday, when
Yeah.
I don't necessarily plan what I'm going to do, and there's things that I don't know about yet, so I can go round that corner and find something new which will inspire me and interest me, or I can choose to lie on the beach, or I can choose to sit in a coffee shop. And it's that face you've got there it's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen, and how lovely to have that mindset about everyday life.
Mm. Yeah. And I suppose when thinking about people that have had a life-changing diagnosis, because it does span massively, part of life. I mean, we can go, it's something the medical profession have told us, or something that I've self-imposed kind of thing. Um, People have to make adaptations, and I suppose the sooner you can get to thinking about how can I make this better for me, or what can I do to get through the next bit of pain till I
Mm.
figure out how to integrate this. I suppose is the bit where people have difficulty getting started because it's just overwhelmed, like you say.
Yeah, and it's very individual as well, hugely individual, because we're all so very different even before we have a life-changing diagnosis. We're all so hugely different, and then something changes in our lives. We're given this diagnosis, and then there's all these things that means about us, all those sorts of things. But then there's also, yes, like you say, there's the physical side of it, the practicalities, the how 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 do I change my life? What do I look at first? And that's,
Mm,
that's what we work with. When I work with someone, we'll work with them as an individual, identifying what it is that they're experiencing that's difficult. And it might just be, and not just be, it might be something like losing their role at work, so they're not able to do their work anymore. It might be losing a role kind of within a family. A lot of people say that people don't treat me like they used to treat me.
mhm,
Maybe sometimes for men, it's they've always been the head of the family. Now they're ill, and people treat them like a poorly person. People treat them like they're a different person, and that's very difficult to handle.
mm,
So some of the work I do is also, it's about communicating. It's about relationships and communicating with your family about how you feel. Back to expressing yourself. And yet, even uh, being an occupational therapist in my background, the the physical adaptations, the physical adaptions to your home, to your environment, can be a really simple first step to kind of making a life that's more doable.
yeah. An interesting point about conversations there. W- I know I had a grief specialist on last week, and for me, I had a traumatic experience 20 years ago when my mother was killed in a bushfire on our farm, and that for me that pain was suppressed for 15 years, and I was, forcing myself to exercise, overdo things, like overindulge basically, which was me suppressing that pain until ended up in counseling. Obviously, work came into this work that I'm doing now in the consciousness world. And, during that period of time, obviously, completely suppressing it, but then getting to that point where I had to start somewhere. I had to start going through that pain and start experiencing that. And, that was a real, I guess, an interesting experience, because for so many years, people probably didn't want to talk to me about my pain, and I didn't have anyone to talk to, which has enabled me to suppress it. So presumably when somebody gets a life-changing diagnosis as well, the family's not there to talk about it because of the fears that they've got. And so what kind of guidance or what kind of things do you do to help people get to that point about talking about it with people, being vulnerable, being open? I mean, how can they be with people that don't want to talk to them?
It's a less than easy, that one. Um, but by normalizing talking about it, having a space where it's safe to talk about it, which might be one to one, might be finding someone who you can talk about it with, to enable expression. So if, let's say, for example, I wasn't able to talk to my husband about my diagnosis, if I talk to a friend about it, that makes it more normal for starters. It makes it easier to talk about it if I'm expressing it to one person. And then I can look at what's difficult, because it's not about talking about the diagnosis, it's about the relationship. So it's about how I talk to my husband. That's the thing that I would need to work with, is thinking about the relationship and why I'm not talking to him about my diagnosis, what it is in our relationship that makes that difficult, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
it's sense
it's
of two.
more many-sided. Sorry.
There you go.
It's many-sided. So it's not just about making it easier to talk about with your family. It's about enabling, normalizing, talking about it, normalizing the ability to express what's difficult, and also looking at the relationships where it's being difficult and what's difficult there. Because when my life has changed and the world's turned upside down, the last thing I want is to be disconnected from the family that I love. So very much part of the work is to look at those relationships and to find out ways of easing those relationships.
Yeah, I've got a couple of points on that actually, because I suppose you can sort of feel like the person's not listening to you, or you can't get your point across, or you don't know how to,
Mm,
or what they're saying back to you doesn't kind of help you. And I suppose it's another bit about when you talk to people, and thinking of it in energy terms. If I talk to you and say I've got a diagnosis, that rings up some energy in me, energy that I'm like afraid of, or that I need to find a solution for, so I can bring it back down to neutral. And so I'm going to give you a solution. I'm going to tell you what you should do now that you've got this, because I'm now become an expert in your problem, haven't I, when you start talking to me?
yeah,
And I'm guessing as a society, we really need to get to a point where we start to learn to listen to someone, recognize that our energy is going to come up, but it's not our problem to solve. So I suppose when somebody is telling you how to fix yourself, how do you get those people who are in that situation with a life-changing diagnosis to be able to not be overwhelmed by people trying to tell them what to do,
that's
or being
very,
able to
very,
even be able to say stop?
yeah, yeah. And that's, I mean, I've taught it as assertiveness over the years, and teaching a small amount of assertiveness. However, it's about self-ownership. It's about owning the self, valuing the self. And there's a lot to be said about, or for, having value in the self. So self-esteem, self-value. Um, but it's all about identity and being yourself. So where I was saying before, I'm a person with systemic sclerosis. I'm Jane, and this is me, and I own me. And if you're telling me something that isn't helpful to me, then owning me needs to involve being able to say thank you. I don't need to hear that thank you. Or or something more helpful. I don't think so. I don't
Mm.
need to hear that is the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
And that's, that's something we'd go into together about. Again, it's about the relationship. It's about where we connect. When two people connect, oh, relationships. We could get into relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my
There
big things as well.
there are so many different ways relationships work,
Mm.
and what we're aiming for is relationships um, that don't impact on each other, relationships that sit alongside and connect, rather than relationships that impose or push. Does that make sense?
Or oppress, yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
impose or oppress. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's
and
a
so we're
really,
looking
really
to
great way of talking about it.
find. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, we work on relationships, and
Mm.
that's all these different things are differently important for each individual.
Yes.
If we're working together for 3 sessions, some people will want to spend a lot of time working on the physical side of things. Someone else, it's all about relationships, and someone else, it's all about the meaning and purpose and finding that expression.
Yeah.
It's oh, that's a scale.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, um, I suppose the other thing too is, like, really getting people to a point where they feel like they can just try something, and if it doesn't work, you can try something else. That's an option and a possibility, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you've used that word opportunity, option, that's what it's all about. And it's about finding that space where you feel like you're able to try something. And that's a space that we can do in coaching together. And I think that's what's so valuable about having that time with a coach, is that it is a safe space. It's a place where you can try stuff, you can try out ideas, you can look at thoughts and feelings and kind of check out what's going on there. You can think about you can even think about approaches that you might take, and then go away and try it and look at it again together. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, it's
Um,
about feeling safe to try it, and that's just something that we work on until we find it, until we find the thing that is safe to try.
and I suppose that's a big thing for all of us really, that, I think we often think that we have to try something and it has to work. It has to be successful, rather
So
than we can try it and, "Oh, well, that didn't work. I'm gonna try something else, and that's okay." Um,
yeah,
and
we
I
worry a lot about not getting it right, don't we? That's very human. That's
Yeah,
perfectly human to want to get it right. We all want to get it right. I want to get it right.
yeah.
I want to do everything right every day. I don't.
No. And, that's where it comes out, that point you talked about, going on holidays. It's an analogy that I use with, my clients as well, and in that one we've got things that change in our life all the time. Nothing stays the same. So a diagnosis is just one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I guess, like, when you choose to go on a holiday, you're choosing to do something fun. When you're choosing a new school for your child's going from junior school to next school, like, that's got to happen, kind of thing. That,
yeah,
one's kind of, can be more fun than the other, but it's still a change.
yeah.
When we go on holiday, like you said, we go, "Oh, I'm in a new place. Oh, I'm gonna have a new experience. Oh, I've never been here before, and what's here?" And you're just in that place of new experience.
Mm.
So why do we just limit that to, like, 1 week a year of when we're gonna enjoy new experiences rather than the rest of the
Madness. Well, yeah, what a lovely idea it is to have that feeling, that sense of possibility all the time. Yeah. Mm. So yes, and that's what you were saying about the changes. That's something as well that I'll use with people, is to look at the changes that you've already had in your life. So you were a child,
Mm,
you became a teenager. Look at that change, and as well looking at how you've got through it, you survived it, using those experiences as evidence of how you have coped. Then changes of school, how did that go? How did that work for you? How did you cope with it? as well, and things that worked for you and things that maybe worked less well for you.
Mm.
And especially kind of moving into adulthood and things like your first job. How did that go? And even though quite often we're choosing change, we might choose to move jobs, we don't always it's not always a joy. The change that we chose isn't always a joy
Mm.
even. So
Mm.
we can, again, look at the effects that change has on us, and how the kind of the thoughts and the feelings it raises, the behaviors that we use when we're experiencing change. And that's, I put my hand up when things get difficult. Oh no, I can't see that.
Yeah,
Pretty
I've got that skill as well.
Yeah, that's like kind of getting to know ourselves side of things is so useful. So that when I do start avoiding something, I can notice that I'm doing it now, rather than
Yeah.
in the past where I'd be avoiding and blaming other people. Now I'm able to take more responsibility for what I'm doing in my life. And that's what I aim to help my clients with, is to have that feeling of being responsible and that feeling of having choice. That's huge, is that ability to choose, to see a situation, give the space, giving yourself the space to assess the situation, and to just see what you want next. Just see which direction you would love to go in, and what you would love to find meaning in. I think meaning and purpose is the other thing. Choice and meaning and purpose. That's kind of on my gravestone. It will say choice and meaning and purpose. That's what she goes on about.
Yeah, that's what life was about. Beautiful. Um, so how can people get started really?
Um, what I do with everyone is I'll have a conversation, a free call. We'll have a conversation for about an hour where I work with them and they work with me, and we establish whether we're going to work, whether we're a match, because I'm not a match for everyone. Um, and I know a lot of people who I can refer people on to if necessary. But yeah, we work together for an hour first of all to work out what direction they want to go in, and to find, to for them to kind of sense me out and find out how I can help them. Because again, I find it difficult to kind of say how I can help people because it's so individual.
Mm.
But in that conversation, we can talk through what their goals would be, and how we can work together, and I can give them a really good idea of the process that we'd be going through.
Yeah, wonderful. Um, so yeah, you've got to get people to kind of reach out to you. And so where do they find you? Like, where are you visible? Is it Instagram, Facebook? How do they connect to you?
I think in Instagram or Facebook, by DM on Instagram or by Facebook Messenger. That's the two easiest ways to find me.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll put all of the details to connect with Jane associated with this video, so you can connect with her and have those conversations. I don't have any questions from the audience yet on any of the lives or on here. So it's just you and me still, which is fine, because I think we've got lots of value that we can give to people through the conversations that we've been having today. I suppose
Cool.
I just wanted to come back on definitions, because that I think is really important. The language that we talked about at the beginning. I used to introduce myself as, hi, I'm Marilyn, and define myself as my mother's death kind of thing, because it was a really big trauma before I'd sort of done anything about it. And so I'd kind of for years made that, for 15 years, made that my meaning, my life, my mother's death, rather than actually living my life.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's going to be the same when people get a diagnosis. Like,
absolutely.
suddenly this thing, which is a massive concept that's overwhelming, has become who you are.
Mm.
um, and it's really important for people to be able to have a place where they can come to reach out, to talk to someone, to ask questions. So I'd really do urge people to connect with Jane and ask questions, whatever they might be, simple questions, just to kind of help them start on that process, because it's a hugely if you invest so much in the process of I am this definition, you're
Yeah.
really going to stifle yourself for the possibilities that could make it better. And I suppose sort of thinking about if someone's in an early stage diagnosis, there are more possibilities than when you're sort of further down
Yeah,
a track.
the sooner you kind of look at your options, your opportunities, the better. And as well, the sooner you take on the definition, the less easy it is to take off again. It's like I suppose it's like a coat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, get it on, get it buttoned up. It's a lot less easy to take it off than if you just kind of saw it over there. Thought, oh, I might
Yeah.
put it on. So yeah, the other thing I do, I haven't mentioned, the other thing that I do in my spare time is I run death cafes.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Cool. That sounds interesting.
It is so interesting, and it's something I'd like to do kind of more of and spread into other topics. Death cafes are not a bereavement group, not a therapy group. It's a opportunity for people to talk about something that they find less than easy to that we find as a society less than easy to have in our lives, because it is in our lives and it is a fact of life for everyone. Um, and yeah, we prepare. We go through life planning things. We plan a lot of planning goes into having a baby, having a birth. We plan, like we were talking before, about changing schools, getting a new job. All that gets planned.
Mm.
We even plan our retirements. But when it comes to death, we just look the other way. Oh, can't see that. Can't see it come. Oh, hang on, it's here. So that's
Yeah.
something that is, it's really important just to kind of have an awareness of it, have an honest conversation about it, because it's life and death go together.
It's interesting. I think Marilyn actually mentioned that when I was interviewing her the other night, talking about having conversations. It was certainly one of the things that she mentioned about getting people to prepare, like be aware of
Yeah,
what they
yeah,
want for their death. How do they want to, their funeral to be, all those sorts of
absolutely.
things, and start having conversations with family and that sort of stuff to make death a subject that people talk about. Like, it is a massively problematic subject, I know
Yes, and there's
sort
a
of,
whole belief as well that if I plan my funeral, then I'm kind of inviting death, which
yeah,
is not true. If I plan my funeral, all I'm doing is planning my funeral,
yeah,
and then it's planned. It's a bit
yeah,
like doing your will. We it's common for people to avoid doing their will as well. It's that thought. It's just a thinking that if I've done it, then then it'll be a bit too easy to die, won't it? You know, and
yes.
it's just humanness. We're all just so human, and we do all these things, and we think all these things, and until we give ourselves an opportunity to think differently, then we're kind of stuck with all our old thinking, and that doesn't make life easy.
No, because it's usually based on the past experiences rather than new things, isn't it? Um, what are these death cafes? Are they online? Where do you do them?
Yes, they're online at the moment. I did one a couple of weeks ago with a group, um, and I'm just jumping on other people's group calls at the moment to do it, just to invite me along and do a death cafe.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
Normally it would be in person, and we sell it as have cake and drink a lovely coffee. Obviously, I'm not providing cake if it's online.
No,
I'm not popping round to everyone's house with a nice piece of cake.
no.
But yeah, it's just an opportunity. It's all about opportunity, isn't it, with me? It's just an opportunity to talk about something that's maybe less than easy
Yeah.
for many of us.
Yeah, I love it. I love the concept.
Maybe we should have one on here.
We could do, for sure. We could definitely do that. I would be welcoming that. Like, death is one of my favorite subjects, Um, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It just means that I'm open to converse about it because of my experiences, and I really am, I guess, in a way, passionate about being there for other people,
Yeah.
because I had a traumatic experience with it, with my mum's death, and I made that more painful, and so I can help people make
Mm.
it less painful. And I know how our society works in the way
Yeah.
of, like, not helping us really, and we have to go to professionals really to get someone to talk to, rather than, the people in our family. You might say something that gets taken the wrong way, because a professional can hear you say something and doesn't take the meaning of it, whereas in your family you might say something and upset someone, and then the conversation closes down and you don't have that avenue to talk to that person anymore. And it's going to be the same life-changing diagnosis. There's an aspect of death also
Yes.
sometimes to be considered and talked about, and if it becomes a terminal
Yeah.
situation, then there's still a possibility. There's still a
There's
possibility.
always
Like,
a possibility. I think that's so important to kind of to see reality and have hope.
yeah,
They're two things that we tend to think we can't have both. And it's so true that we can have both. We can have our reality. We all have our reality. And we can also have hope. We can have dreams. We can have goals. We can have all the things that we would love in our dreams. We can have them in our dreams, and it there are things that we can create as well. There are directions that we can go in and opportunities that we can take up.
yeah. and
Mm.
and that just popped into my mind, a little analogy that I use when I'm doing my trainings with people, that goals might seem massive, kind of thing, but they start with an idea and a thought. And if you just allow that thought to disappear and it just evaporates, then that possibility disappears from
So
your
a missed
collection.
opportunity. Yeah.
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 And so, like, I, put it down to a simple thing. It's like we are making ideas into reality every day. Like, if I choose today I want to go on a shopping trip, and I actually take actions and go out the door and go on a shopping trip, then I've created that thought into an experience. It's the same with a holiday. So it's exactly the same as this. If there's a goal that people want to create for a future, like presence is now, like you talk
Yeah.
about where we are, current reality is what we're in today, the moment that we're living, the reality of the diagnosis and the situations that are kind of going through our mind that are causing us stress and worry. And then there's the possibilities of I'd like to do something. You got to allow those thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, kind of the goal doesn't have to be the big thing, even though the goal is maybe the day out shopping.
Mm,
The first little part of it is putting your shoes on,
yes.
getting your coat on, opening the door. So yeah, it's kind of don't want to say baby steps, but that almost came out of my mouth.
Yeah, but it is. It's small steps, and that's how you achieve the result. Every time
Yeah.
it's a little step, and then it just gets you one step closer to that whole experience that you were going to have. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's very easy for us to not break it down to think it can be achievable and avoid.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're looking at the big picture, when you're looking at the big goal, it's a big thing and it's over there.
Yeah,
Whereas over here is the first little step.
yes,
And that's really useful to remember, isn't it? Really useful.
for sure. Well, it's
You're
been wonderful having you on here, Jane. We have talked for an hour already.
I never knew that was gonna happen. When you invited me on, you said it's an hour. I thought, "No, I'm never gonna be able to talk for an hour."
Oh, well, you can see. Um, and it's been really wonderful to explore this conversation, because it's such a difficult time for people. And I guess the fact that there is something that they can do, and there's places that they can go, and there's hope and there's possibilities, is the thing that we really want to be able to allow people to have and reach out for. And
Absolutely.
like I said, I'm going to put your contact details in with this video, and it'll be available for people to watch who haven't been able to make it on here today, and then connect with you. So, is there any final thoughts that you would like to leave people with today?
Choices, opportunities.
Lovely. And communication and connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed connecting with you today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, let me just stop that broadcast.